Hi there. I was unable to make it tonight, and so before I left for overseas, I wanted to just record some simple remarks. Congratulations to you all, perhaps I should say to us all, for being 20 years old. The ADA, that means, got going in 1999, and that was about 7 years after the World Wide Web was launched in 1993. And uh, we might have known in 1993 that things needed to change. It has since become clear. It was clear by 1999. It's been clear. It's been getting clearer and clearer over the next 20 years that copyright law in Australia is a little bit like property law was 10 years after civil aviation got going in the United States. The lawyers among you may know that in the United States, the Roman principle applied in property law, which proposed that one's property rights in land went down to the center of the earth and up into the heavens, creating a little bit of a problem for people who want to fly around the place. And as is the way with such things, that law remained in place, honoured in the breach. People more or less ignored it because flying overhead didn't do anyone any harm. And it was, in fact, it took until the 1940s for a chicken farmer to decide that he wasn't happy with the US Air Force overflying his property. Anyway, I don't think that that was a very well-timed objection during a world war, and the law got changed. The US, being the home of so many huge internet companies, but in fact before then, had adapted its law, intriguingly enough, codified the common law to allow things like fair use in copyright, which balance the interests of copyright owners with people who might occasionally use copyrighted material in ways that do not interfere with the rights of copyright holders to economically exploit their copyrighted products. In Australia, we have been less sensible about this, and in issues, for instance, where those providing internet infrastructure copy copyrighted works with the entirely in order to allow copyright owners to exploit those works, that they are nevertheless exposed to various kinds of legal jeopardy. Parliamentarians occasionally discover that they are breaking the law, as they did when they discovered that time shifting, moving TV recordings from one time to another when they're free at one time and moving them so they can watch them later on, that was contrary to copyright law. And so they made some very specific amendments to copyright law rather than general ones. Unfortunately, it has served the defenders of legacy business models to suggest that anyone who looks for some sanity in these arrangements is really trying to water down copyright, is really trying to steal the hard-earned labour of writers and artists. Now, apart from a very small fringe, very few people are trying to do that. They are trying to make the law work sensibly. Copyright Agency Limited, a government-established collecting agency, also known as CAL, seems to, well, it's very keen on hanging on to the extraordinary cumbersomeness of copyright because it enables it to collect copyright fees on things that any reasonable person would accept it should not be collected on. So they collect almost all their revenue from, or a very large proportion of their revenue from cash-strapped education sector. That's fair enough. But they collected on things like the copying of websites that are already free to copy, and then drag the chain when the law reform process catches up with this and tries to make it work a little better. So as I see it, the ADA exists to try to tip the scales a little bit more towards sanity in these debates. Unfortunately, this is quite a well-oiled operation, and this way in which Australian creators feel hardly done by because they're not well remunerated, which is often the case, feeds into the ability to persuade them that somehow someone who wants to make copyright work better is somehow undermining their income, which they are not. So I've talked a bit to some of the people in CAL about trying to have our own ability to respond to these kinds of, what it has to be said, are misinformation campaigns. And with members of my own profession of economics not being particularly good at listening to the community on numerous issues, it's turned out to be quite easy to persuade creators, famous people, that the economists are out and the economic reformers are out to get them, which they are not. So I think it's important for the ADA to have a fairly direct response to that, to what's going on, and and after having some discussions with some people in the ADA, have also unilaterally has started to tweet and email the people I know when I see them, let me be frank, falling for some of the lines that they are fed, and going out into the public arena and participating in a campaign which is designed to defend copyright, as if copyright is under some kind of threat from people who want to make the copyright system fairer and more efficient, as if they are on the side of people, for instance, who simply copy copyrighted material, downloaded and so on. No one's arguing for that, or nobody who's seriously in the game is arguing for that. But we have our work cut out for us to try to get that message through to the Australian public and to Australian parliamentarians, so that we can get our institutions to operate sensibly with regard to copyright in Australia, at least as sensibly as the copyright arrangements in countries like the United States, Singapore, and so on. I hope you enjoy the celebrations tonight. I'm again sorry that I can't be with you, and until next time, perhaps I'll make it to the 30th anniversary of the ADA. Thanks.